Hello and welcome to the 9 News Business Buzz, where we take up what's happening in business, how it impacts you and our economy. I'm your host, Ryan Frazier, 9 News business expert and CEO of Frazier Global. I'm joined by Ed Sealover of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the editor of The Sum and Substance. Ed, always great to have you.
Glad to be talking business again, Ryan.
I love this stuff. Let's dive into what I'm going to call this enigma of a discussion impacting Colorado and how we grow and certainty, our expectations of development in our state and our housing market. We're seeing cities and towns push back against state efforts to preempt local land use control, aiming to keep home rule where they believe it belongs. Joining us now, we have Kevin Bommer, Executive Director of the Colorado Municipal League. Welcome, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Great to be here.
Great to have you. Kevin, you got to help us understand this tension between state mandates and local control and what it means for Colorado and development and generally where our state is headed.
Great lead in. You have to look at it from a perspective of who do you want to be in charge of day-to-day items, day-to-day life. In our structure of governance, obviously state, county, municipal, special districts, whatever. And a lot of attention is focused on the State House and passing laws that impact everyone in the entire state. A lot of times those are done that create mandates for whatever, that's what legislation often is. There is a concept called local control, and more importantly, home rule, which is a constitutional issue that says, okay, that's fine, but in some cases, those that have chosen to, in the case of home rule, legislate locally can do so and legislate safely on matters of local and municipal concern. So for home rule municipalities, that is a lot of things that people care about. It's land use, it's elections, it's the structure of their government. It is whether or not they have a merit system or civil service, how they handle eminent domain, all sorts of things that are enshrined within a home rule charter. And the importance of that is creating certainty to be able to, again, legislate locally without interference from the state. And unfortunately, the state oftentimes runs legislation, bills that are purported to create issues and answers and solutions because they say they're a matter of statewide concern or a matter of mixed state local concern. But the problem with that is, oftentimes, is that the legislature, the governor, they don't get to decide what those matters mean. Those are constitutional interpretations, which means they can only ultimately be decided in the court of legal opinion.
And of course, the reason we're talking about this here today is not long ago, a sextet of cities sued the state over laws passed in 2024, a session that was largely defined by its focus on affordable housing. And these were laws, two of them specifically, that said, one, you've got to do denser housing, you've got to zone for denser housing around transit. And a second law that said, and help me out, what was the second law exactly that they've sued over?
The second law is the residential occupancy requirements.
Thank you. That's right. I guess I want to throw this to you, and you can talk about the case if you want. You can talk about laws if you want, but I want to talk about this question of, I think everybody believes there is an affordable housing problem in the state. Most average people, most average businesses are not talking about, hey, what's the breakdown between local control and statewide control? How do we deal with this issue of housing affordability without dealing with a statewide push to get more affordable and denser housing?
Really simple answer. It's one that the Municipal League has been saying for long before this administration was in office and the current focus of the legislature on housing generally. It's partnership, not preemption. So in 2023, after Prop 123 passed, we had before that we had the opportunity to take that investment that was going to come from those dollars and work in collaboration with the state using the power of municipal zoning and all of that, a long recognized local and municipal concern, and the ability of the state to partner with them to be able to achieve the goals that really aren't all that different. Where the friction comes in then is when the General Assembly is saying, okay, but every city has to do it just like this. And that flies right in the face of decades of jurisprudence. And that's maybe not a good enough answer for folks. I think what's really important is that what that means, if we all are concerned about affordable housing, but we also care about the character of our communities and the way it grows and looks, that what it's going to be like in 20 years. That means that I want to be able to access the people who are in charge of making that decision. So residents, businesses in their communities, but then they work regionally with each other. The Denver Regional Council of Governments is built exactly for this purpose, to be able to work regionally to help achieve density goals, transportation, infrastructure, et cetera. And just passing a bill down at the State House to say everyone has to do it like this isn't good enough, and it doesn't address the longer-term planning efforts that cities make. I always say that cities don't build, they plan. And so they implement their plans. They do so looking 20, 30 years down the road, planting trees under which they will never sit under the shade of, right? And the opportunity for people to participate in that locally is important to create certainty, not just for them, but also for the businesses, the developers, and whatever that interact with those local governments.
Kevin, sometimes on the Business Buzz, we get into some pretty meaty topics, right? And I like to say, not everybody always understands some of the jargon. And so I want to break this down a little bit. Whether you live in Aurora or Grand Junction or Fort Collins or Pueblo, why should everyday Coloradans care about this issue?
Well, I mean, first of all, 108 of the 271 municipalities are home rule municipalities. So those 108 definitely should care about it, people that live there, because it is literally talking about the future of their ability to govern locally. But more broadly speaking, where would you rather solve problems? Would you rather solve problems in Denver if you live in Hugo, or in Washington D.C. if you live in Holyoke? I mean, these are things that our Constitution, our whole statehood was built on, was local control, solving issues locally. And yes, we have some heady regional issues, statewide issues, national issues, but that doesn't mean you throw out now almost 150 years of Colorado history built on a principle of local control to say, we're just going to decide everything in the State House.
You kind of touch on this, but let me just follow up with this question around how the concept of home rule ultimately influences the long-term character and growth trajectory of Colorado communities.
Sure. Well, a home rule charter is an instrument of limitation. It creates limitations on how the local government actually works, but it's also the basis for a vision, what a community's vision is going forward, and allowing direct democracy, both in the council members that are elected locally, but also how the charter is structured and how residents can participate and businesses in those governance decisions. So, it is critical to be able to preserve that and not dismiss it out of political expediency.
I'll give you a last shot at this before we wrap up on this topic.
So I want to come back to this idea. The exceptions to home rule are issues of statewide concern. We are 117,000 housing units short in statewide, and employers can't find places to put their employees when they come. And I think most Denver area employers would say, for example, I don't care if they live in Denver or Aurora or Wheat Ridge, I need them to get housing. So why isn't the affordable housing crisis a statewide concern matter?
Yeah, I've heard the numbers, and I don't necessarily buy everything that everyone's selling, because I also know that municipalities and counties have a whole bunch of approved development permits that aren't being acted upon. So the truth is somewhere in the middle there, and it brings in a whole nother set of discussions, which obviously we don't have time for, but are developers not developing because the transit infrastructure is inadequate? Is the transit structure inadequate because there's not the density there yet? That's the local issue, or is it the other way around? Ultimately, I know that we have a housing shortage in both certain cities and towns, regionally, statewide, nationally. And if you start saying, well, we're going to expand the borders, expand the reach of this, are we going to start deciding how to deal with local housing policy, local land use policy from Washington because it's a national problem? No. The answers are in the room, and that's what we always tell our folks. Let's solve them here and work collaboratively with our neighbors. That's what municipalities and counties do all the time.
Kevin, I'm glad you brought up Washington. This is probably good a segue as I could have asked for. So I want you to hang around with us. Kevin Bommer from CML. There is some very interesting things happening, to say the least, in Washington, D.C. I think it's fair that we turn our attention there, where there are federal budget battles are unfolding. These fights might seem distant, but they have direct implications for Colorado's economy and our state's ability to address important issues. Ed, let's start with you. What are some of the current flashpoints in the federal budget discussions, and how might they impact Colorado?
I think the one that most people are talking about right now is Medicaid funding. The budget bill proposes somewhere around $800 billion in cuts, and a lot of that's going to come from Medicaid funding. The question is, what does that mean for the state here? The idea is that basically we would have less people on the Medicaid rolls, and there are some people who say, well, that's good. We need people to take control of their own health care to pay for their health insurance. But the problem is, especially for rural hospitals where a lot of their population is on Medicaid, and this is very true of Denver Health, for example, as well, some inner city hospitals, are those folks going to get insurance, or are they going to be coming into the hospitals without insurance, which pretty much means they're not going to pay their bills? And so the question is, how much are these Medicaid cuts going to affect our hospitals' ability to serve their customers? What are they going to have to cut out in terms of services if they're not getting paid by Medicaid? And for some areas of rural Colorado, which those hospitals don't have a future without that.
Yeah, one of the things I hear from a lot of folks is a discussion over what's going to happen with the higher ed community and Pell Grants. And of course, Pell Grants account for billions of dollars in federal funding, not just here in Colorado, but around the country. And while most folks may not associate Pell Grants with economic activity, believe it or not, students' ability to pay tuition, for room and board, all that has economic repercussions, if you will. And I think the jury's out on whether that's going to be left intact or not. But there are a number of issues that I think people generally care about. Kevin, I want to come to you because you're looking at this from a cities and towns perspective. What are you all thinking in that respective community about potential federal cuts?
I mean, there's some key direct examples. One of the potential pay-fors is a reduction in money that comes from the EPA to state revolving loan funds, and that may sound like something I'm not sure if I care about that, but that's what's used to help comply with mandates and upgrades to water and wastewater infrastructure. And obviously, safe drinking water and clean water is important, but also those infrastructure projects are economic drivers too. So these things have a rolling effect. More indirectly, I mean, if there are Medicaid cuts that force the state, which has already got its own budget issues, to have to cut even more, we're coming off the heels of a legislative session where they just took $140 million of money that supports local government infrastructure and put it in to backfill the state budget. So there are a lot of ways in which municipalities, my members, are watching to see what are the impacts going to be and what are some potential opportunities.
So many people, I think, are really torn over this issue because clearly federal budget cuts has implications in terms of our economy here locally. But when you're dealing with $36 trillion debt, over $1 trillion deficit, people are saying that federal government got to get serious because there's potentially disastrous effect with not doing anything around getting spending under control. That said, business groups are actively pressuring congressional delegations, our congressional delegation here in Colorado, and you wrote about this in the Sum and Substance for specific funding for things like firefighting fleet. Tell us a little bit about that.
This is an interesting fight for business to get involved in, but what it breaks down to is this: Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado Springs has one of 3 wildfire aerial firefighting fleets that's out there, and they are working with 30-plus-year-old planes right now that don't hook in well to new technology, that really need some upgrades. They're not even asking for, hey, stop these cuts. They want this new funding. They want funding to be able to upgrade this fleet. And the reason businesses are getting involved in this is, one, because wildfires are causing problems here. They're sending property insurance to the roof for both business and homes. If we're not using the most modern technology, that's going to be problematic. But even more so, there is a concern with these federal budget cuts that you're going to see consolidation of some of the military units and some of these civilian-focused units like the wildfire aerial firefighting fleets. And they think that if Peterson doesn't get this upgrade soon, there will be questions raised of, why keep these at Peterson at all? Why don't we just consolidate them in Reno or in Cheyenne, where other aerial wildfire fighting fleets are now? And so they're pushing to keep Peterson relevant, to make sure that when the next round of budget cut discussions comes along, there isn't people saying, well, do we need to keep Peterson operational? Plus, each of these units brings a lot of folks with it that contribute to the local economy as well. Business groups are pleading for funding of these airplanes because they need this to keep our economy going.
Kevin, I want to come back to you. What's the message you're carrying to folks in Washington right now over the possible cuts?
Yeah, a couple different ways. The Association of Municipalities in Washington, D.C. is the National League of Cities and advocates with both the administration and Congress on a whole laundry list of priorities, not just in the budget, but all issues municipal. And all the state leagues, including the Colorado Municipal League, also stay very, very close touch with our delegation. And I'll give credit where credit is due. This White House has a very interactive White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs that is accessible. And as a deputy director, as a former mayor, talk every couple weeks or so. What's going on? What are you hearing? What are your concerns? And so I know that at least those things that we're talking about and a whole lot that we wouldn't have time for here today, they're at least being heard. And they're being received. So between National League of Cities and the Colorado Municipal League and my counterparts in 48 other states, I know that we are conveying that we know there's going to be budget cuts. We know there's going to be impacts. We know that there are priorities. However, we want to make sure that everyone has all sides of the story before those decisions are ultimately made.
Kevin Bommer with the Colorado Municipal League, thanks for joining us here on the Business Buzz today. Ed, we got a wrap from this debate over land use and the state overstepping their authority to the impact of federal budget battles on Colorado. Our goal for our viewers is for you to stay informed, to be engaged, and to get ahead of the game. So be sure to tune in for more in-depth business news and discussions here on the Business Buzz. For 9 News, for Ed Sealover, I'm Ryan Frazier. Till next time.